All right. So on Friday, we talked about just a teeny tiny bit. Well, not teeny tiny, I guess, in the grand scheme of things, because we did cover a couple of million years. All right. Kind of the rise of humanity, the concepts of evolution, the differences between, bless you, creation stories and science, and some of the things that we, can deduce from either archaeological digs and just what's left over of these ancient places. Then we looked at, kind of a quick crash course in evolution, okay, where you do see changes over time. The concepts of survival of the fittest, where if you're able to adapt to the environmental changes around you, then your DNA gets passed on. And of course, we looked at the various species of humans, of hominins. Who are the only ones left? Out of all of the human species that at one point existed. Give you a hint, starts with Homo. Sorry.
Homo sapiens.
Yes, Homo sapiens, all right? All y'alls, okay, are Homo sapiens. A couple of you might have a trace of Neanderthal in you, but very, very minor, okay? And so, looking at that then, we looked at some of the reasons why Homo sapiens was able to adapt. The use of tools, the use of fire, but most importantly, the use of language, okay? Now, Homo sapiens existed for about 300,000 years, okay? And their primary lifestyle was hunter-gatherer, okay? We're not very creative, all right? What kind of life did they live if they were hunter-gatherers? Nomadic, number one. How did they get their food? They hunted it, yes. And of course, to supplement the meat, what else did they do? Yeah, they gathered, they foraged for whatever was out there. Okay, this is how humanity existed for about 300,000 years. Okay, and of course, humanity migrated because they were just following the animals and following the plants. Okay, but then we get to the big A, and this is where we start. All right, agriculture. Okay, around 10,000 BCE, so that would be about 12,000 years ago. Okay, humanity begins to abandon this lifestyle. Okay, and begins to do, something different. Now, this was precipitated by, and it's not a coincidence, this is towards the end of the last ice age, so we begin to see then the earth tending to warm up, and with this warming up, we see new varieties of plants and whatnot start to, grow, all right? So we're not just eating one type of thing and then supplementing that with the meat of animals, okay? Well, because there are more plants and the temperature is a lot more comfortable, all right, humanity doesn't need to move as much, okay? And of course, if we're not moving as much, they're still wandering a little bit, okay? The next thing that begins to happen is that, number one, humans realize that we can make these plants grow on purpose, okay? We don't just have to wait for, nature to happen, okay? The other thing they realize is that these animals that they've been chasing for hundreds of thousands of years, you can actually train them to stay with you, okay? And of course, that makes the hunting part all that easier, okay? Because if it's just going to sit there and cuddle up next to you, there you go. All right, now we've got meat for dinner, okay?
When did we start to utilize the cold and preserving food?
That doesn't come until much later. We're looking at a couple thousand years later, okay? Now, we begin to see then two types of lifestyles, okay, spring up. settled agriculture, which is what we think of, like farms and things like that. Okay, they stay in one place, they grow their food, they might have some animals on the side, chickens, cows, whatever, but for the most part, their primary diet comes from farming. And then we have pastoralism, because humans don't give up this wandering, tendency right away. Now, with pastoralism, you focus mainly on animals, okay, raising animals, and of course, you might wander out, okay, because, you need to go somewhere for them to eat and graze and grow up and, boy sheep, girl sheep, whatever, make baby sheep, okay? But then, after a couple of weeks or maybe a couple of months, you come back to your home base, okay? And stuff like that, all right? Ooh, yes, okay? Now, kind of towards what your question was, but in this case, we're not preserving food, but humans realize that and especially with this warming trend, okay, you get more plants, you get bigger plants. And like I said, humans realize that you can actually make these grow on purpose, so they start collecting the seeds from them and saving those seeds so that they can, in the future, plant this same thing again. Okay? So we're not quite preserving the food yet, but we're preserving the seeds, because we know that if we go somewhere else and plant these seeds, eventually we're going to get the same food. Okay? So once again, we're not relying on just nature, the wind, bees, to carry this stuff and leave it wherever.
You didn't eat dogs, did you?
No. But we do get to dogs in a minute. Oh, it's the next bullet point. Okay? Now, the point is that the first animal, okay, I still call them mammal crackers, sorry. The first animal that humans domesticate is not for food, okay, but are dogs. So if we're not domesticating them for food, why did humanity domesticate the dog? Number one, companionship. There's a reason why we call it man's best friend. Okay? Protection, yes. They will, keep other more vicious animals away.
Pack hunting?
Yes, they have been used to help humans hunt. Like I said, humans don't give up the hunter-gatherer quite yet. And so, yes, people still use animals to hunt, or dogs, to help hunt. All right? Anything else? For the pastoral people, the dogs are trained for work, okay? So that the shepherd can just kind of chill, and it's the dogs that herd the sheep and, keep them in a certain place and whatnot, okay? So yes, the first animal that humans domesticate is a work animal, okay? After that, okay, we assume, we guess, once again, because this is before the development of writing, okay, prehistoric, and number one, from oral tradition, number two, from drawings and paintings and whatnot, that it was probably wild sheep that humans were first able to convince to come and stay with them. And as I mentioned, boy sheep, girl sheep, they do their sheep thing. And now you have baby sheep. And just the baby sheep never leave, because they're there now. And yes, you keep growing your flock. And when you need food, okay, you kill one or two of them, all right? But we think it's sheep because what else are sheep good for? Wool, clothing, yeah, you gotta, cover up. And so humans realize that, yeah, okay, not only can we eat these things and it's yummy, all right, but we can also use its stuff to make clothing, okay? And of course, eventually, like I said, some people keep them around. Some people who focus exclusively on animals, yeah, they take them out, they go and graze, they go and eat, they grow, whatever, and then you come back, okay? Eventually, humans will domesticate other animals like goat, cow, pigs. I don't think you can ever truly domesticate chickens, but chickens and whatnot. If you've never been attacked by a rooster, right here, victim of a rooster attack, then you know, okay? You don't know that, you know, chickens are hard to, whatever. Anyways, okay? So, now, we will look at farming in a minute, but amongst the pastoral lifestyle, remember, these are the ones that focus predominantly on grazing animals, whether it's sheep or goats or cattle or pigs or whatever, okay? We have two types, and yes, you have to know these, all right? That's a hint, okay? Number one is transhumans, and this is the one I've kind of been describing, where you do have a home base, whether it's your hut, whether it's a village, whether it's a community, whatever, okay? You do have, you know, your bits of animals, you know, whatever. You take them out into the mountains, into the valleys, for them to eat and grow and reproduce, and they get extra poofy, all right, all of that stuff. And then when the time comes, you go back home, and yes, now, obviously, the first thing, you know, meat, all right, you can slaughter a few, and you've got, you know, a couple of meals and festivities and whatnot. We already mentioned wool, okay, which is one of the reasons why sheep were the first to be domesticated. You can also get it from goats, all right, if you've ever heard of cashmere. Cashmere is goat wool, all right, so if you have like cashmere scarves or gloves or whatever, okay. What do we get from cows? From cattle and pigs, I guess. Leather, yes, we take their skin. All right, leather shoes. Okay, you know, I don't. Nobody really wears leather pants. All right, that's like, you know, from my generation. But you know, leather jackets. What, you know, so you can use that for clothing. And then, of course, humans discover that any one of these animals. I know for us, we usually just think cows, okay, for milk, all right? But trust me, and I think I have a picture. I didn't put it in the slides, but maybe I'll throw it up there on Wednesday when I find it. You can drink goat milk, all right? Some people drink goat milk.
Sorry, I love goat milk.
Oh, you do? Okay, I thought you were like surprised. No. Yeah, I've had goat milk. If you eat chobani, that's made out of goat milk, so you're already eating it. All right, some people are like, what? Yeah, Greek yogurt, it's Greek because they use goat milk, not cow milk. I see a few shocked faces. Yeah. All right. That's made out of goat milk, so you can use goats for milk. I'm assuming you can drink sheep's milk. I've never had sheep's milk. All right. Pig milk, I don't even want to go there. All right. I'm sure it is drinkable. But yeah, you do have milk from those. And what products do we get from milk?
Queso.
Queso,
cheese.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. You were saying it in Spanish. Threw me off for a sec. Yes, cheese. Okay, butter, yogurt. Okay. So humans begin to create all of these different things. So yeah. Okay. All right. We can have our steak. We can have something to drink. We can have something yummy melted to pour over it. You know, all of that other stuff. Oh yeah. Now we can get dressed with the stuff that they produce. Okay. Now. The other type of pastoral lifestyle is what we call nomadic, okay? These eventually become the hordes that travel across Central Asia for the next couple thousand years, all right? All the way up until, like, let's say the Mongols in like, the Middle Ages. All right, so there will always be these groups that they have no home, they just go, they follow their herds of whatever, okay, and because they need to keep up with these groups of whether it's cows or sheep or goats or whatever's, okay, they are the first group of people to also domesticate the horse. Okay, because obviously they need to be able to ride and keep up with all of these animals. And when they stop somewhere, they set up camp, okay, they kill a couple whatevers, they milk them, they do. And of course, if they ever need anything else that can't be provided by their animals, these are the groups that then do, here's a nice little village. We are going to plunder and pillage and rape and burn it down and take everything we need from them. Okay? And then we move on, keep on going. Okay? And then once we need more stuff that our animals can't provide, here's another cute little village. All right, pillage and plunder and rape and steal and take it all with us. Okay? And so we have these groups, and they're important because eventually they do settle down, and we will talk about them, but it's the groups that do all of that throughout the thousands of years of whatever, all the way up until, like I said, the Mongols. Okay? So, now, agriculture, okay, the way we're describing it here, right? The first evidence that we have of it happening, okay, on a large scale is in an area known as the Fertile Crescent, okay? The name of the area is Mesopotamia. Where is Mesopotamia? Basically, find Iraq on a map. That's Mesopotamia, all right? This is where the first evidence of large-scale human agriculture exists, all right? It started about 9,000 BCE, so about 11,000 years ago, okay? We see agriculture on a large scale. Now, the two basic crops that humans in this area domesticate and grow, the first one, and I'm sorry, I reversed the order, but the first one is wheat. What do we get from wheat? Bread. Okay, so they were making bread. All right, so I'll get to the animals in a minute. So in addition to the other stuff over here, they supplemented their diet with bread. Okay, the other crop they grew is barley. All right, here's the fun part. What do you get from barley? You use it to make louder. Beer. Okay. Beer has been around for as long as humans have been seven. Okay, so yeah. All right. Ben Franklin once said, "Beer is evidence that God loved us." Okay, he really did. Okay. Now, just FYI. Okay. In many places, even today, it's actually safer to drink beer than the water, just because the brewing process actually gets rid of a lot of the microbes and whatnot. And so it kind of makes sense that early humans figured out, hey, this stuff is making us sick, so why don't we, do a little magic with this barley, and now we have another drink. Okay, so wheat and barley. Okay, now, early Mesopotamians, okay, they also domesticated goats and sheep for the reasons we've talked about, okay? Eventually pigs, okay? And cattle, all right? I'm kind of saving camels for last because while you don't necessarily eat a camel, what are camels used for? Transportation, yeah, travel, carrying things, pack animals. Once again, work animals, all right? Kind of like the dog, all right? Except, we usually don't make our dogs carry stuff. But in this case, camels are used for that. Although I do know that in a lot of places, people do drink camel milk as well, so you can kind of use that, all right? And whatnot, okay? Now, the reason why we talk about Mesopotamia and we say this is where we see the first large-scale stuff is because it led to the formation of some of the first cities, okay? So we're talking about a period of at least, all right, 2,000 years where the first groups kind of settle down, all right? We see these little settlements, could be an individual farm, could be a couple of groups of people, and little by little, this begins to grow into villages, okay, into towns, and then eventually into cities, okay? And along the way, all right, other things develop, all right, as humans begin to, spend more and more time around each other. Because remember, these hunter-gatherer groups that humans lived in for hundreds of thousands of years, they were small. Okay? They're little groups. Okay? Because if we're the only two hunters, obviously we can't catch or hunt animals to feed the entire classroom, but our own little group here. Okay? And of course we've got some people that can then gather berries and other other foods that grow wherever. Okay? Now, remember maps. The area is called the Fertile Crescent. It's this green stuff. Okay? Because why? What does it kind of look like? We're not very creative in history. It's a crescent. I was going to say croissant, but that's just because I'm hungry. But yes, a crescent. Okay? Now, the name Mesopotamia is Greek, which literally just means between the rivers. Because in the area, we have the Tigris River and we have the Euphrates River. They start off in these mountains and then they flow down into the Persian Gulf. Okay, now I know most of you aren't obsessed with maps the way I am, but the way I always remembered Tigris, Euphrates, the word Tigris kind of sounds like tiger, and the tiger is on top. It's like gonna pounce. Okay, so if you ever have to figure out on a map, oh damn, which one's the Tigris one? Oh, Tigris, tiger, Tigris, pounce. It's on top. All right, so Tigris, Euphrates. Okay, now, why would the first agriculture happen in this area? Okay, well, I'm glad you asked. Okay, because it wasn't just there though. Okay, in the next chapters, beginning with chapter 2 and chapter 3, we are going to look at other societies where agriculture developed. Okay, now, I know Egypt is in Africa, but we always look at it separately. In Egypt, right around the Nile River, okay, about 3,000 years after Mesopotamia, okay, we see the development of agriculture, and Egypt is one of the societies we're going to look at. We're not really going to look at the Sudan, but they also developed agriculture in that area. Okay, we are going to look at China. All right, in China it occurred around 7,000 BCE. For them, because it was a different area and they had different plants, it's not like today where you can get stuff from wherever. Millet is another type of grain, all right, that can also be used to make bread. And then of course rice. Okay. Those were the crops that they first domesticated. We're gonna look at India as well, okay? In India, it occurred right around the Indus River, okay? Which is where we get the name for India, from the Indus River, okay? The word India is just Greek for past the Indus River. Because to the Greeks, that's where it was, okay? And that happens around 7,000 BCE. Now, one of the important things, okay, is that I didn't list it for China, but in China it happened along both the Yellow River and the Yangtze River, okay? Most of these early agricultural societies happened along rivers. In Mesopotamia, it was 2 rivers. Okay? What is the importance of rivers to agriculture? Yes, water. Okay? You need water to grow things. Okay? And so the original societies all developed along rivers. It's a very easy, accessible water source. Now, other places like New Guinea and Mexico and Peru, you don't really have that, so they developed slightly differently, okay, when it came to their agriculture and their cities and whatnot, okay? But we are going to look at those as well, All right. Now, like I said, I'm going to flood you with maps. And so, some of the major areas where agriculture does develop, like I said, the ones we're going to look at when it talks about West Asia, we are talking about Mesopotamia, we're kind of talking about Egypt and parts of India, okay? So yeah, you know, wheat and barley, sheep, cows, pigs, goats, all of that stuff, okay? When we look at China, as I mentioned, rice and millet, okay? The Chinese were the first to domesticate the chicken, okay? I use it in air quotes because, once again, if you have chickens or have ever tried to raise chickens, I don't truly think we can domesticate them, but hey, who am I, you know, victim of rooster attack, okay? When we look at the Americas, like Mexico and Peru, okay? In Mexico, corn, which I'll use the word maize because that's what, you know, the textbook uses, but beans and squash and those types of vegetables, okay? And then, of course, in South America, if you love potatoes, okay, you can thank ancient Peruvians because they're the ones that domesticated the potato, okay? And of course, llamas and alpacas, they didn't eat them, okay? And unfortunately, you can't ride them the way you do camels. So what are llamas and alpacas used for?
Clothing.
Carrying things, yes, they used them as pack animals. Also, their wool, okay? I own a couple pairs of alpaca socks. Oh, it's so warm, they're nice and it's like little angels caressing your toes. Okay, so yes, they were also used for their wool and whatnot. Okay? Sorry about the maps, but in the next two chapters, okay, the first society we're going to look at is Mesopotamia. Like I said, we're going to look at Egypt, okay? We're going to look at India, and we're going to look at China. All right, those are the first four. And as I've already mentioned, they developed next to rivers. They developed first. Okay? Now, that's not to say that other areas did not develop, but they developed much later and much more slowly. Okay? And most of them, including Europe, all right, didn't make it past the villages, okay? They grew into these tiny villages and then they kind of stopped there. We don't see major cities in those areas until thousands of years later, okay? Now, when we talk about Europe, we kind of separate it into different parts, okay? Because Europe is pretty varied. Looking at Southern Europe, or at least Greece and the Balkans, when I say the Balkans, we're talking about areas like Bosnia and Croatia and those places, okay? They first learned to domesticate the animals that are in the area, okay? So whether it's goats, sheep, cattle, whatever, okay? And so they're able to make their living or their survival from those animals, and then whatever random plants that they can find. Eventually, okay, and we'll talk about this in the next chapter, because the Mesopotamians, because they got such a head start on agriculture, they were able to travel and trade their foodstuffs, okay? There is evidence that they made it as far as southern Europe, or at least to where modern Turkey is, and they traded with people in southern Europe their wheat and barley for, you know, whatever these early Europeans may have had, okay? And at some point, people in Greece and people in Bosnia and Croatia and all of those areas, you know, learned how to gather the seeds, and then they were able to plant these crops in their home lands. All right? Now, Mediterranean. We're talking still about parts of Greece, but predominantly Italy, okay, and maybe southern France, okay. Obviously, we have people that may have traveled there from, you know, other parts of Greece, from the Balkans. maybe even as far away as Mesopotamia and Egypt, that they may have somehow ended up in Italy, okay? We also realize that, yeah, someone shows up and says, you know, you guys are doing this shit all wrong, okay? You gotta, like, you know, you see those animals, you can actually get them to stay with you, all right? You see some of these plants, you can actually, like, make them grow on purpose. And so we think that the people that may have arrived obviously brought those ideas and that knowledge with them. And of course, because, you know, Italy is pretty much surrounded by water, and any of the coastal areas, like I said, parts of Greece, France, you can reach by ocean travel. It probably happened fairly quickly, okay? Now, in areas like Turkey, all right, its ancient name is Anatolia. You don't need to remember it right now, but in like chapter 3 you do, so might as well learn it now. Okay, Anatolia is known as Turkey. It was probably that central area because it's next to Mesopotamia, it's next to Greece, and so kind of like where the ideas met. And so more than likely, this was a place where you were able to go and be connected to the rest of Europe. Now, when I talk about the rest of Europe, we're talking about Central and Northern Europe, okay? Things here develop much, much, much slower, all right? Because number one, while there are some pretty big rivers, there are no major rivers. Nothing like the Tigris, nothing like the Nile, nothing like any of those rivers that are able to not only bring people, but that can provide that level of water, okay? Number two, Central and Northern Europe is much colder, okay? So the growing season is much shorter, all right? And crops that grow easily and quickly in Mesopotamia and Egypt, where it's warm and sunny, aren't going to grow in Central and Northern Europe, okay? I put there forests, okay? During this time, most of Europe, or most of Central and Northern Europe, is very thick forest, okay? If you do want to plant anything, what is the first thing you have to do? If there's thick forest everywhere, cut down those trees and clear the land, okay? Remember, we don't have a Home Depot just, you know, a mile down the road to buy these big-ass chainsaws. Okay, yeah. No, they're working with very, you know, with primitive axes, okay, where they do have to cut down these trees. And it's not enough to just cut down the tree, because you want to plant stuff. What do you also have to do? You've got to rip out those stumps and completely clear the land. All right? So because it was very labor intensive, because they did not have the materials that we do today, if they got 2 or 3 trees out of the way, okay, shit, we're done. This is our farm, right here. This is all we're doing. Okay? And remember, they not only needed land to farm on, they needed, like, a house to live in. All right? So they had to clear quite a bit of land. So obviously, it's a lot smaller. So we're getting just these teeny settlements, or maybe a village or two. Okay? Something very small. All right. In addition, because the temperature is way different from these other places, the crops that they're able to plant are not going to be the same. The animals that they're going to domesticate are not going to be the same. So they have to make these huge adjustments. So yes, it happens much later, and it happens much, much slower. Okay? And this is then where we get, you know, unlike Egypt, where you can plant year-round and grow things, you know, this is where we begin to get, all right, you plant in the spring, you grow it in the summer, and then in the fall you harvest it, and then what do? Store it, preserve it, okay? So that I hope we make it through the winter. I hope everything that we grew and stored and preserved will take it through the winter so that in the spring, yeah, we're all gonna lose like 100 pounds, but we're able to plant the seeds and start all over again. So yeah, see, it takes a couple thousand years and a different environment for humans to finally do that, okay? When they did domesticate animals, for some reason in Central and Northern Europe, it was predominantly cattle. They would supplement their diet with hunting though, so they still kept some of the hunting traditions. Okay, now, I've got a few minutes and this is where we'll end, and this will be the big question. What is the effect of agriculture then? Why does it allow these hunter-gatherers to stop into these little settlements, and then those settlements continuously grow until eventually we get these giant cities, okay? Well, when you start farming, there is a food surplus, okay? So, and before we even get to this, what I have written up, when there's enough food, people don't starve to death, okay? So babies grow up into adults, and they have more babies, okay? So more food equals population increase, okay? Your population keeps growing, all right? Because you no longer have to worry about starving to death, or if you're living a hunter-gatherer lifestyle, do the animals bite back? Yes. Okay, so you don't have to worry about, putting yourself in danger just to obtain a little bit of meat. Okay, number one. All right. Number two, here's where we get the thing. When there is a food surplus, okay, so at some point we have so much food, people are eating, people are not starving to death, people are making it to adulthood, okay, and then those people are having more babies and the cycle keeps repeating, but not everyone has to be a farmer, okay? Especially those of you who maybe suck at farming, all right? So because there is a food surplus, for those people that are bad farmers, okay, you can now pursue other things, okay? And so, and I am so sorry, remind me of your name. Evan. Sorry, Evan, you suck at farming. You're the worst farmer ever. You can make nothing grow. Okay, you're lucky to have survived the last couple winters. But Evan is really, really good at making baskets. Okay, so he says, pardon my French, fuck farming. I'm just going to focus on making baskets. Okay, well, we have our farmer over here, and I'm sorry, remind me of your name. Michael, who's really great at farming, and he's like, dude, those things that you keep making, those baskets, that would be great to carry all of the wheat and apples and cucumbers and carrots that I cannot get rid of. Holy shit, look at all this stuff. And so I don't have to just carry it in my arms, but hey, I'll trade you some of my super excess food for all of your baskets. And he's like, all right. So now he has something to carry them on, all right? Sorry, Olivia, I do remember your name. She also sucks at farming. All right, but for some reason she's developed a talent for making things out of wood. All right, chairs and tables and stuff like that. So she also goes to Mike and says, hey, I noticed that you just like sleep on the floor and you eat your, food on the ground and whatever. So how about if I trade you, I'll make chairs for you, I'll make a table for you if you give me your food, or like whatever's extra, whatever you don't give to Evan over there. And he's like, okay, all right. And so little by little, we begin to see the emergence of a complex society, okay? Because now, number one, we have people that are doing other things. And I put up here, because we do get arts and crafts, okay, making baskets and carpentry and whatnot, okay? At some point, we take, the biggest, buffest, rippest looking guys. They can't farm, but we do need protection from those, not only predators, not only like bears and wolves and shit like that, but these Mongol hordes that are like invading us. So, in exchange for food and whatnot, you guys are going to be the protectors. And oh my goodness, she has a talent for making long sticks with pointy edges. Okay, so we have our weapons maker over here. And so the few farmers are able to feed the society while other people begin to, develop other aspects of society. And of course, we talk about, complex societies because now we need rules, all right? We need people to enforce the rules. And who's to say how many of Mike's carrots are worth how many of his baskets? Okay?
As many carrots as you want. I need carrots.
Okay, well, you're still growing them. All right? Or how much cucumbers, is Olivia willing to take in exchange for a finely crafted table? All right? So yeah. So we begin to need, those rules. And so you get where I'm going, right? This complex society begins to emerge, and eventually, yes, okay, we see these communities growing larger, more powerful, because now we need more. So the guys in the back, you guys look pretty ripped too. You guys are going to be the warriors, and then of course we see the development of religion. And wait, who's going to lead us all? Okay, the original rulers were what we called warrior kings. Because basically the biggest guy gave the orders. Okay? Later, that changes to where, how do you become king today?
Yeah, because
Yes, you're basically the firstborn. Okay? Later it becomes hereditary. But originally, and I'll point to all of our warriors, it was like, who's the strongest? Okay? Yeah, he can, back up what he says, so I guess he's in charge. Okay, type of thing. Now, some of the early cities, and we call them city-states because the cities were basically individual entities. It isn't until thousands of years later that we begin to get like very, very primitive countries. Okay, so it was basically the city and a couple of little spots around it. Probably one of the earliest ones, and this is mentioned in your textbook, the city of Catalhuyuk in Turkey. We think it existed around 7500 BCE. All we have found are different shrines and tunnels and catacombs. Some of the leftovers of what the society was. We think it was a religious center, because of all of the paintings and artifacts and shrines that we have found. Okay? Nobody left behind. This was, the largest, ball of wax that, no. So we can only guess as to what the purpose of it was, but this is one of the earliest. Okay? Now, most of the early cities, like I said, okay, happened in Mesopotamia, in that area between the Tigris and the Euphrates River. All right? And it isn't just one or two. Okay? It is a couple dozen. All right? Because the land was ideal for agriculture. And over a space of about 2,000 to 3,000 years, all right, we get this development. Right? Just to finish off, these are some artist renditions of what Catalhuyuk probably looked like, okay? Because, all right, this is what it looks like today. It's in the middle of Turkey. If you ever go to Turkey, go visit the site. And so, artist rendition of what it might have looked like based on that. Okay. And then these are some of the artifacts that we have found and why we think it was a religious center, because there are depictions of worship. There are some of these, two-headed gods and whatnot, okay, when it comes to that, all right? Now, the very last thing, okay, the last effect of agriculture, because it also affects family relationships and whatnot. Remember, for hundreds of thousands of years, humans have been wandering the planet. Okay, so probably the first biggest change is now we have a permanent place, okay, to call home. All right, whether it's in Mesopotamia, in Egypt, in China, in India, boom. All right, your society is not moving. Okay, number two, whereas hunter-gatherer communities were small, all right, now we have these large cities. Okay, Catalhayuk, we guesstimate, had about between 80 and 100,000 people, which to us is like, yeah, whatever. No, back then, 11,000 years ago, that's huge. Okay, as opposed to just small groups that are out there hunting animals. All right. We begin to see then that the structures of what we think of society today begin to develop. Okay. The example I used. Who's to determine, all right, how much his farm products are worth in exchange for his baskets or her tables? Okay. And how do we decide, because they are defending us, how do we decide how much food and other resources our warriors are given? Okay, and so we have to make rules because you just can't go around like hitting people over the head. So what are those rules going to be? Who's going to make them? And then who's going to enforce them? Okay, so we begin to see then, different systems of government, pop up. Okay, finally, we see a change in family dynamics, because remember, for the hundreds of thousands of years that humans were hunter-gatherers, what did the men do? Hunted. What did the women do? Seems pretty straightforward and simple. Okay, but now that we're all in a big group, now that everybody does different things, okay, we see a redefinition of what these gender roles are. Families obviously are a lot bigger because we're not starving to death in infancy. We're not getting eaten by a wild lion or whatever. People have enough to eat. People have security and safety. Okay, and we see the development basically of a patriarchal society. What do we mean by patriarchal or the patriarchy? Who's in charge? Men. Okay, but from patriarch, we get the word tata, which then, father. All right, so even if we have an awesome farmer here who has a very successful life, if his dad is still around, you still listen to dad and do what dad says. Okay, so it's a patriarchal society. I apologize, ladies. I'm going to be apologizing a lot because with the development of this, women are relegated to cooking, cleaning, and having all the babies, and that's pretty much it. Okay. Some societies allowed women to do a bit more, but unfortunately, those were the exceptions. Okay, and not the rules. Okay. I just ended my PowerPoint showing you more maps of where those early societies were. Okay. Remember.